Tropical storm Ida strengthened into a Category 1 hurricane on Friday afternoon just before hitting Cuba's Isle of Youth. Protesters have taken to the streets of El Salvador against the economic measures and constitutional reforms of the Nayib Bukele administration. US President Joe Biden has vowed to take revenge after the explosions at Kabul's international airport on Thursday. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. Tropical storm Ida strengthened into a Category 1 hurricane on Friday afternoon just before hitting Cuba's Isle of Youth. The Cuban government had issued hurricane warnings in the Isle of Youth and several western provinces as Ida gathered strength. As a country well prepared for such weather events, the necessary measures were taken to prevent loss of life and damage to property. After passing through western Cuba, forecasters warned Ida could cause life-threatening flash floods in the Cayman Islands. The storm is set to head towards the US Gulf Coast and could hit the southern United States as a major hurricane, according to forecasters. Ida has maximum sustained winds of 75 miles per hour, and the west of Cuba is already experiencing tropical storm conditions. In the United States, some 14,000 firefighters battled more than a dozen large wildfires across California, including a growing blaze that was slowly pushing toward the Lake Tahoe resort region. Winds and temperatures were expected to pick up in coming days while humidity drops, adding to the challenges endured by crews working in harsh terrain. Flames churn through mountains just southwest of the Tahoe Basin, a home to thousands and a recreational playground for millions of tourists who visit the Alpine Lake in summer, ski at the many resorts in winter, and gamble at its casinos year-round. There have been more than a dozen big fires in California, including one that destroyed 18 homes in Southern California, which has so far escaped the scale of wildfires plaguing the north all summer. Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva concluded his tour of several states in northeastern Brazil, further consolidating his support ahead of a potential presidential bid. Lula closed the tour of the country's impoverished northeast, which began on August 15th in Salvador, capital of Bahia state, in an event with black community movements on Thursday night. Brazil's northeast is a historic bastion of the Workers' Party, led by Lula, who has not yet confirmed whether he will be a candidate for the presidential election in October next year. Lula regained his political rights months ago thanks to the annulment of the corruption convictions handed down against him, one of which landing him in jail for nearly 18 months. The latest polls gave him a wide lead against far-right President Bolsonaro in the upcoming presidential elections, who has the lowest approval ratings since he took office in January 2019.
Since the federal government does not put any money here, and has not put any money into health anywhere in Brazil, it is important that he knows what the government of Bahia is doing, because it seems to me that the Minister of Health also knows little about public health in this country. It is important for us to know that the people are starving. It is not because of the lack of production. It is not because we don't have food. The people are starving because the people do not have money to buy food.
The gesture of Lula being here and making a specific agenda with the theme and the issue of racial debate in our country is fundamental, and we were very moved by everything, and we are sure that in 2022 Lula will be President of Brazil and Jake Varner Governor of Bahia.
We are very happy to be able to receive him. He is a great political figure, perhaps one of the greatest political figures of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st, and someone who today represents a symbol of hope and transformation.
The Peruvian Congress approved a vote of confidence for President Pedro Castillo's cabinet choices this Friday. The discussion on the new cabinet took place over 2 days, with fears that a no vote would spark yet another political crisis. The opposition-dominated Congress voted 73 to 50 in a law teacher and union activist who took office a month ago after a tight election race. Congress had called for changes in various ministries, but the president only replaced his foreign minister, Héctor Bejar, who was subjected to some of the fiercest opposition among right sectors and the media. Brazil's High Court postponed the vote on the so-called time-frame argument until September 1st, a case that could redefine the limits of protected indigenous lands in the country. The process has been pushed back already on several occasions, and a ruling had been expected this week, leading thousands of indigenous people to march to the capital, Brasilia, where they camped out against a possible move to strip them of their lands in the interest of agribusiness, logging and mining companies. According to the time frame argument, indigenous peoples can only claim the land they inhabited at the time of the enactment of the 1988 constitution, despite the fact that many had been violently driven from their lands under the military dictatorship that preceded it. Years since the disappearance of 43 students from a teacher training college in the Mexican town of Ayotzinapa, rights groups and families are still waiting for answers and justice.
Uncle Thomas passed away without getting justice for the murder of his son, and today Uncle Saul also passed away without knowing the whereabouts of his son. This is something that has not given any results. We have not seen any justice. We have not seen any progress. The President of the Republic, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has not given any results, because in his campaign he was saying that he was going to find the 43 students, and yet we have not seen any progress. That is why we are here asking for justice and clarification of the facts.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Protesters have taken to the streets of El Salvador once again in anger at the Nayib Bukele administration's plan to adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. The Salvadoran Association of International Freight Carriers called on the executive and legislative branches to modify the obligation set forth in Article 7 of the Bitcoin law, or failing that, exclude the sector from it. The union noted that the law is approved without the corresponding consultations, and the measure will affect the freight transport sector economically. The sector has already been negatively impacted by the rise in fuel prices this year, and warns that freight prices could increase by 20%. The Salvadoran Association of Industrialists and the Chamber of Commerce and Industry of El Salvador have also expressed concerns about the use of Bitcoin. And social movements also mobilized in El Salvador against the government of President Nayib Bukele's constitutional reforms, economic measures and corruption. Opposition legislators have pointed out that the constitutional reforms carried out by Bukele seek to exert pressure and increase his political and institutional control. Meanwhile, different political and social sectors also reject the government's expansion of militarization and have condemned the protection offered criminals following revelations of negotiations between the government and the country's top gangs. Over 40 isolation centres for the admission and treatment of COVID-19 patients have been opened in the Cuban province of Ciego de Ávila, aimed at controlling the surge in cases. We have more details with our correspondent, Lisandro Andrés.
This is the Ciego Ávila Hotel in central Cuba. It became a pediatric hospital in the midst of the COVID-19 health emergency in the province and received all children in the territory over 1 year of age, either suspected or confirmed cases.
We are increasing the overall quality of patient care. We are admitting the patient immediately when he or she gets sick. That is, no child of any age stays at home. All patients are being hospitalized, and that allows us to act swiftly against the disease and start the treatment before the child presents any kind of complication. And that is why the patients evolve with such a short stay, because they are also admitted at an early age.
With capacity for 240 children, the medical staff and the hotel workers work hand in hand to provide excellent care to these little ones.
All the treatment that these patients receive is guaranteed. This is something that all the provinces should take into account on seeing a centre such as this created. All the workers of this hotel have joined forces to function as a hospital. As you know, they do not have the experience and they are complying with all the protocols, and it's being done with great effectiveness.
We continue with the mindset of taking care of people, but now there are children with COVID. It is a greater responsibility, and I think we are assuming it quite well. We are working with health professionals. They are teaching us how to work.
Dr. Abdel-Denis Rees highlighted that in less than 1 day the facility was reconditioned to open as a hospital for children and adolescents.
This Delta strain is highly contagious, and the virus is already spreading inside the home, within families. That is why we have so many infected children all over the country, and the fact of being able to have them in an institution like this is not only an achievement, but a triumph of our system. This can only be done in Cuba. It is unthinkable in any other part of the world to have a hotel serve as a hospital, because that requires resources, it requires money, it requires other means that sometimes seem so easy to get, but they are not. So the fact that a state, a country, a province, that a system decides to put into operation something as noble as pediatrics, a service such as a hotel as a hospital, indicates the greatness of this country.
Parents accompanying sick children are grateful for the care provided.
When my girl got sick, I arrived at the hospital and they told me that I had to go to an isolation centre. You know that this frightens anyone. However, now I've arrived here, in spite of the nerves of my girl being sick and the fear one has about this disease, I'm also positive. As you can see, the conditions here have nothing to do with what I might have imagined upon learning that I was going to an isolation centre.
Cuban health authorities have warned about the high number of infections in children and young people in the last few months. That breaks record practically every day, which is why initiatives like this contribute to elevating capacities in pediatric institutions exclusively focused on the care of patients with COVID-19.
Lisandra Andrés, teleSUR, Ciego de Ávila, Cuba.
In Brazil, health authorities in Rio de Janeiro state began vaccinating young people between the ages of 12 and 18 in an ongoing campaign aimed at reaching 90% of the state's population by the end of the year. High school-age girls were the first group to receive their first dose of the Pfizer vaccine. Public health officials are especially concerned with the spread of COVID-19 in schools, which have now opened, and said they will prioritise getting as many students vaccinated as possible by the end of August. Over 70% of all residents in Rio de Janeiro have received at least one dose of a vaccine, in a country that has seen a major health crisis and corruption scandals regarding the purchases of doses. From September 1st, Rio will demand proof of vaccination to access collective use areas, including gyms, sports clubs, museums, art galleries, theatres and more.
This group is an important one because it's a group that goes to school, so it is important to protect them from coronavirus and prevent its spread.
I have been waiting a long time for this vaccine, since last year, so I could return to a normal life. I want to go back to school, go out with my friends, and go back to my normal life.
The Chinese government has slammed the United States for attempting to provoke an international conflict with its army's presence in the Pacific Ocean. China denounced the United States for promoting unilateralism of military antics. Beijing pointed out that the drills the United States and its allies are conducting in the area go against the common interests of peace, cooperation and development of the countries of the region. A US warship and a US Coast Guard cutter sailed through the Taiwan Strait on Friday in yet another act of provocation. China called on the Western nations involved in similar moves to abandon the Cold War mentality and focus on actions that lead to regional and world peace. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. US President Joe Biden promised to take revenge after the explosions at Kabul's international airport on Thursday. During his remarks from the White House on Thursday afternoon, Biden reported on the US service members killed, calling them heroes. He said the US has an obligation to continue fighting terror. His message to those responsible for the attacks was, "We will hunt you down and make you pay." In this context, the president sought to differentiate between the Taliban and ISIS, which has claimed responsibility for the attacks. Biden also pledged to continue evacuations by the established deadline. In response to questions from reporters about whether the US should remain on Afghan soil, he laid blame for the swift exit with former President Donald Trump, failing to refer to his own responsibility for the Afghanistan war when he served as vice president under the Obama administration.
We will not be deterred by terrorists. We will not let them stop our mission. We will continue the evacuation. I've also ordered my commanders to develop operational plans to strike ISIS-K assets, leadership, and facilities. We will respond with force and precision at our time, at the place we choose, in the moment of our choosing.
The death toll in Thursday's explosions at Kabul's airport has risen to 110. The number of injured also continues to rise, with many still looking for their loved ones. Meanwhile, US Central Command warned new attacks were being prepared. The airport, crowded with people trying to flee the country in the past week, is now clear. The Taliban has set up a roadblock around the venue with armoured vehicles.
One of my brothers was at the airport. He wanted to fly abroad. Unfortunately, he is missing after the back-to-back blasts. I don't know whether he is inside the airport or not. US troops are not allowing anyone to go there. Since yesterday, I have been searching all the hospitals in Kabul, but have not been able to find him.
On Friday, US General Hank Taylor said there was only a single explosion at Kabul's airport during a Pentagon briefing, despite the reports of the previous day.
For you, that we do not believe that there was a second explosion at or near the Barron Hotel, that it was one suicide bomber. We're not sure how that report was provided incorrectly, but we do know, it's not any surprise, that in the confusion of very dynamic events like this can cause information sometimes to be misreported or garbled.
The US Department of Defense seems to be correcting its own intelligence reports regarding the Kabul airport events. On Thursday, the Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby confirmed a second explosion near the Barron Hotel. The latest statements also contradict the Russian reports of a second blast. China's authorities called on the Taliban to make a clean break with all terrorist organizations and clear obstacles to regional security.
The Afghan Taliban have made it clear to China that no forces will be allowed to use Afghan territory to do anything harmful to China. The Afghan Taliban should earnestly fulfill their commitments and make a total clean break with all terrorist organizations, resolutely crack down on the team, and clear obstacles to regional security, stability, development, and cooperation. China firmly opposes and strongly condemns all forms of terrorism and is willing to work with the international community to jointly respond to the threat of terrorism and prevent Afghanistan from becoming a source of terrorism again.
The United Nations Refugee Agency has warned that up to 500,000 Afghans could flee the country by the end of this year and appealed to neighbouring countries to keep their borders open for those seeking safety. The Deputy UN High Commissioner for Refugees noted that this figure is a worst-case scenario and that so far there has not been a huge outflow of Afghans, but the situation within Afghanistan is changing rapidly. The UN official did not elaborate on what developments might trigger such a sudden increase in refugee numbers. Just a few thousand Afghans have been recorded as entering Iran daily, while traders continue going back and forth from Afghanistan to Pakistan. The image of chaos in Afghanistan as foreign troops pull out is being used as a means to present a supposed humanitarian agenda on the part of the very nations that have intervened and waged war in the country for the past 20 years. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, African Union President Felix Tshisekedi and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa held a press conference on Friday following the Berlin-hosted Compact with Africa summit. The unequal access to vaccines against COVID-19 was at the centre of discussions.
We expressed our disappointment, we expressed our unhappiness and said that it's not fair that Africa has only vaccinated 2% of the entire population of the 1.3 billion population, and yet your more developed countries in the north have vaccinated up to 60%.
The availability as well as the production of the vaccines is linked to the economic well-being of the African continent. And when we see today that we have vaccinated more than 60% of our population, and that is this 2% in Africa, it is of course a dramatic injustice which we need to overcome. We talk about that honestly today.
We also looked at the situation in Africa in relation to vaccines, talking about the need for technology transfer and property rights so that the vaccine can be produced in Africa.
In Pakistan, at least 16 people died Friday in a fire at a chemical factory in the southern city of Karachi, where the search for the dead continues. The cause of the blaze that broke out in the mid-morning remains unknown. A spokesman for the Karachi police said that 16 bodies had been recovered and between 40 and 45 people were working in the multi-storey factory when the fire started and had been trapped inside. The spokesman added that the factory had only one entry point, which was also being used as an exit, and the roof exit was blocked, which badly hampered rescue efforts. A passenger boat carrying more than 100 people sank Friday in eastern Bangladesh after colliding with another small boat in a large water body, leaving at least 21 people dead and scores missing. The incident occurred on a lake in the town of Bijoynagar. A local fire service spokesman said that divers were searching the scene of the accident for more bodies and that reinforcements had been called in from neighbouring towns as locals also joined the rescue efforts. Local authorities formed a committee to investigate the accident, which was the latest in a string of similar episodes in the South Asian country. Experts blame poor maintenance, lax safety standards at shipyards and overcrowding for many of these unfortunate events. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.